After a year of waiting, Rockstar finally gave us the second trailer for GTA 6, and with it they also gave us a Newswire article on their website that goes over each of the characters and what significance they're going to play in the story. So with that being said, I'm just going to be going over each of them in today's video, so make sure you stick around for the full thing and let's just get straight into it. First up, we have one of the main characters named Jason Duval, and his caption says, "Jason wants an early life, but things just keep getting harder. Jason grew up around grifters and crooks. After a stint in the army trying to shake off his troubled teens, he found himself in the Keys doing what he knows best, working for local drug runners. It might be time to try something new." This tells us a lot, and it's especially because he is going to be one of the main characters like I said, but it first tells us that he was in the army, so he's going to be that rugged type of dude, you know, the go-getter, probably a little bit strict when it comes to the people around him, and he wants to advance himself as it says there. It says he works for the drug runners and he works for Brian, which we'll talk about later, but he wants to try something new, which I assume means he wants to up himself, get into Vice City, get out of the Keys, and, you know, start some of that more advanced crime, I guess is what you could call it. It says he grew up around grifters and crooks, so it's probably all he knows is just to do crime to earn money and, you know, stay alive, put a roof on his head, which we'll see later is actually the truth of how he's doing it. It's also important to note that he had a rough upbringing. We don't know much about his parents, as we'll see it is different with some of the other people like Lucia, but Jason grew up poor. He probably didn't have his parents a whole lot, and he just had to survive using grifters and crooks, which is how he got to where he is now. Next is the other main character, Lucia Caminos. Lucia's father taught her to fight as soon as she could walk. Life has been coming at her swinging ever since. Fighting for her family landed her in the Leonida Penitentiary. Sheer luck got her out. Lucia's learned her lesson, only smart moves from here. Similar to Jason, there's a lot to unpack, and it really is helpful. First of all, it says her father taught her to fight, so once again, it's a different upbringing than Jason, because we assumed that Jason probably had no parents back then, he was just surviving off the people around him, but it says that she learned fighting from her dad, and it shows that she was really connected with her family. It's her protection of them that actually ended her up in prison, which is a huge detail. It's also interesting that it says sheer luck got her out of prison, possibly a reference to meeting Jason. Somehow he was the luck that got her out of prison, because we've seen that in the first and second trailers. He's meeting there, he got her out, they're like this couple, so that's probably what they mean when they seen sheer luck, as the luck was she ran into Jason and became friends and then eventually dated him. I could also see her being one of the archetypes, you know, you see in stories and movies and stuff like that, where she has that troubled past, she's working on it, she's trying to become stronger, but she makes mistakes in anger, and then, you know, they have to deal with the consequences. So that could definitely be something where she goes over the edge, you know, does something crazy when she's mad at someone, and then it just kind of gets them into a hole. Down the page a little bit, it has something interesting too. It says, more than anything, Lucia wants the good life her mom has dreamed of since their days in Liberty City, but instead of half-baked fantasies, Lucia is prepared to take matters into her own hands. This solidifies the idea that her upbringing wasn't horrible, as she has both parents in the picture, because it's talked about both in these little 2 paragraphs, and they also lived in Liberty City, so somehow they came down from the north all the way to Vice City and then ended up in the Keys, ended up in Leonida Penitentiary, so we'll just have to learn about that a little bit more, because it's impossible to predict stuff like that. Next up is Cal, and his says, Jason's friend and a fellow associate of Brian's, Cal feels safest hanging at home, snooping on Coast Guard comms with a few beers and some private browser tabs open. Now, Cal seems like an interesting character, and I've seen it with some other people. They're saying that he is a Lester type guy, and I completely agree with that. He's kind of a tech guy. He says he is snooping Coast Guard comms, which isn't, you know, the greatest tech in the world, but it means he's probably going to be that intel guy for the story, which helps with heists and stuff like that. And he's also kind of like Lester, how he's lonely. He doesn't have a lot of friends, but he will drop everything to help you at a moment's notice, which will be very helpful in the story for Jason and Lucia, and maybe some of the other characters we're talking about today. A caption a little bit lower on the page says he is the low tide of America and happy to be there, which means we will most likely see most of him in the Keys, and then maybe not much after, you know, maybe it could be one of the things where he's on the phone, you know, you call him for certain things, but in terms of actual dialogue and interaction, probably mostly going to be the Keys, just because the Keys are kind of the dingy kind of ghetto area of, you know, Leonida and the map of GTA, so once they get out into Vice City, they'll probably make some new connections. Next up is Booby Ike, and his caption is, Booby is a local Vice City legend and acts like it. One of the few to transform his time in the streets into a legitimate empire spanning real estate, a strip club, and a recruiting studio. Booby's all smiles until it's time to talk business. Based off this, we know he is a rags to riches type of guy, someone who came up from nothing. It also says he's gonna be cutthroat when it comes to deals. He's gonna do anything to get money. He's not gonna, have empathy when it comes to doing deals with people. So it's probably gonna be a dangerous business, but most likely Jason will meet him later in the story. They're probably gonna be intertwined somehow, probably later, probably Cal's counterpart, once he gets into Vice City and gains some of that, reputation, I guess you could call it, and starts earning more money. Then he gets some of these bigger deals with guys like Ike. He's going to be one of those characters that's nice to everyone except those who want something to do with his money, which he's not going to be inherently rude to, but he will be mean if stuff goes wrong. So he does have a recruiting studio, which is how he gets introduced to the next guy that we're talking about. It says he is working together with Draquan to get a hit and earn a ton of money, which is the next guy. Draquan Priest was always more of a hustler than a gangster. Even when he was dealing on the streets to make ends meet, breaking into music was the goal. Based off this description, it doesn't sound like he's bought into the crime aspect of Vice City. Booby Ike will probably persuade him to start it for more money once they start becoming partners in the music industry. He'll have to introduce him into the crime and, illegal aspect of his daily dealings. I don't know exactly how we will see this type of stuff, because if this story is from the point of view of Jason and Lucia, then I don't really know how their individual interactions will show us basically if they're doing it behind the scenes. So that leads me to believe that either Jason or Lucia will somehow team up with them and maybe they'll become a trio. But once again, I don't know exactly how the story is going to be and how the kind of character, cutscenes, all that stuff is going to be. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There's also a connection with the Real Dimes group that I'm going to talk about next, which is something to do with music. They signed the Real Dimes, but once again, I'm just going to tell you about them right now and it'll make a little bit more sense. Baylux and Roxy, aka Real Dimes, have been friends since high school, girls with this savvy to turn on their time shaking down local dealers into cold hard cash via spicy rap tracks and a relentless social media presence. So these are two girls that are social media influencers in the Leonida world who are somehow affiliated with Draquan. They signed with them. They are rappers, but they have more of a presence online. It says they had a hit 5 years ago and have been chasing the same lightning through Draquan and Ike. There's not a ton we get about them, but they must do something as they are part of this Newswire post. But once again, I don't really know how these three groups, Real Dimes, Draquan, and Ike, are gonna actually play into the story and play a role in it. So that's just gonna be something we have to wait and see. Next up is Raul, who seems kind of like a standalone character. It says, confidence, charm, and cunning. Raul's a seasoned bank robber, always on the hunt for talent, ready to take the risks that bring the biggest rewards. It says he's a bank robber, so he obviously has something to do with heists. Somehow he's gonna meet with Jason and Lucia and I guess begin working with them, probably bring them under their wing and teach them how to do this high level crime. Once again, they aren't giving us a ton of context, which is hard to make theories that aren't just kind of shots in the dark, but from the pictures, it looks like he is rich. So I assume he's just doing it because for fun, basically, because he used to do it for money. Now he just does it for the love of the game, I guess. Because you can see he's kind of has these boats and stuff. If you go on the Newswire page, you can see he looks rich. This fun idea is compounded because it says he is always ready to raise the stakes, and if you aren't ready, then you can leave. So basically saying he just likes to do it. He keeps making it harder on himself, even though he doesn't really even need it. He must be a thrill seeker type of character and just uses robbing as his thrill. Last on the Newswire post, and I mentioned it earlier, is Brian. It says Brian's a classic drug runner from the golden age of smuggling in the Keys. Still moving product through his boatyard with his third wife, Lori, Brian's been around long enough to let others do his dirty work. Now, for sure, he's going to be very important in the beginning because Jason works for him as a runner, and the reason he does is because he gets the house for free. Jason lives in one of Brian's houses for free as long as he does those drug running missions, which is basically the beginning of the trailer that we got today. So if you haven't watched it for some reason, go watch it and you'll see that Brian comes up to him, he does that, drug, he gets the money, and that's why he gets to live there. And I talked about it earlier, but the Keys are kind of the dingy area on the Leonida map, and Brian seems like the kingpin of the low stakes crime that goes on there. Not too much to be lost or gained, but he is the manager of that area. So when Jason goes to Gellhorn, he kind of graduates from that low stakes crime and gets out from under the wing of Brian. From the trailer dialogue, it looks like Jason just kind of puts up with him for the money and doesn't necessarily like him. After all, he is putting a roof over his head and kind of mentoring him so that he can move on in his life, as Brian's not really worried about moving on, but Jason is. I think Brian's going to be one of those unintentionally funny characters that just says kind of out of pocket things that just kind of make people laugh. But with that being said, that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to like and subscribe as new GTA 6 content comes out, because we still have so much to learn, and right here is where you'll get some of the best info. So with that being said, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.